Well, we had volumes quite a bit higher yesterday than earlier in the week, where they were quite low. So a good sign that traders are starting to return to their desks.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I think, now that people are sort of settling back into work after the Christmas and New Year holidays, we saw a bit of, it was a muted market. And, with Santa Claus having returned to the North Pole, I guess we've got to look for our gifts elsewhere and look to the market. So we've seen about $500,000 Monday and Tuesday. And yesterday it went up to about $1.2, $1.3 million. And I think we will see more activity in the market going forward, not just this week, but in the weeks to come.
Well, of course, we know the Santa Claus wasn't very kind to the market last year. You lost about 5%. What are the prospects for the Kenyan market going into 2010? I mean, do you think we're going to have a better performance as the economy starts to recover there?
Absolutely. I tend to think, it probably will be better than last year to all intents and purposes. I mean, last year was really a bad year. So, look, if it's flat on last year, that's okay, but I tend to think it'll certainly be better than last year. I mean, if we do 10-20% above last year, I would be pretty happy with that.
Mm-hmm. Of course, everyone we've talked to has talked about the anticipated foreign interest coming back into the Kenyan market. What's going to drive that foreign confidence in the Kenyan market? Because we know there has been political fallout there. We know we had the drought last year. There were a lot of negatives for the market last year. What are the positives that could draw foreigners back in?
Well, look, if one was to look at the world over right now, all markets are going up, and I tend to think what we're seeing right now is foreigners coming in, mopping up shares in the anticipation that the African markets will pick up as well, because they seem to be left behind. So that would be one thing that would drive foreigners into the market. I tend to think there are also positives on the political side. I sort of mentioned this to Alicia last week that there is the upcoming constitutional referendum that's going to be taking place. If there is a positive vote to that, if there's a yes vote, and if the International Criminal Courts actually do indict people that were implicated in the 2008 violence, if these two things should come to the fore, then I tend to think there will be a lot of positive sentiment out there, and we should see the markets certainly going up. Foreigners, as always, have a leg up over the local institutions, who certainly take a back seat now given its reporting season. So lots of foreigners coming in at the moment.
Of course, we had those third quarter growth figures out earlier, which showed a pretty poor growth, well, actually a contraction in the third quarter of last year. The World Bank looking for growth of around 3% for Kenya this year. Do you go along with those figures?
Yes, I think that's cautiously optimistic from them. Absolutely, 3% is decent. I mean, what you've got to bear in mind about Kenya and Nairobi in particular is that we've got a lot of infrastructure spend right now. If you were to come to Nairobi right now, it's a bit of a mess, quite frankly. I mean, there's a lot of traffic jams and all of that, purely because there is a lot of infrastructure building going on. We're trying to just expand our roads, things that should have been done, quite frankly, decades ago. It's happening now, at least. So the infrastructure should lead to lots of positive economic benefits. I tend to think, should the rains come in at the right time, the long rains around about April, that would be great. We've already had rains right now, almost bordering in floods, if you will, and that could to some extent have sort of ruined the harvest. And the other thing I'm also seeing for this year is the World Cup in your own backyard. I mean, it's in 11th June to 11th July. You can tell I'm a football fan, but should we have lots of tourists coming through Kenya, going on their way to South Africa? It sort of coincides with a migration as well. At the Mara, I think tourism should also sort of see a boon this year. Coupled with the two things I mentioned before, the ICC and the constitutional reform, I tend to think 3% is a cautiously optimistic guesstimate.
Mm-hmm. Well, just looking at that infrastructure developments and obviously the prospects for the tourism sector with the World Cup, I mean, are there specific companies on the Nairobi Stock Exchange that stand to benefit from all that?
Well, certainly the tourists. You look at the tourism sector. That is, TPS Arena would be a good company to look at. Kenya Airways, I tend to think, will stand to benefit from this, because I'm sure they'll be bringing lots of tourists coming through Nairobi onto Johannesburg, or directly onto straight from London or wherever it is in Europe, right through to Johannesburg. So KQ certainly would be one of the benefits of the upturn in the economy. I tend to also look at Safaricom for some reason. I tend to think they are just at a sweet spot in terms of the growth curve for data. So Safaricom would be one to look at for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, Safaricom was one of the underperformers last year, but so far this year it's been among the top gainers every day this week so far. Do you think that Safaricom's prospects, I mean, as you say, have improved a lot, and investors are seeing that?
Oh yes, they certainly have. I think when I left the office, it was at 4 shillings and 90 cents. So, last year, just before Christmas, it went up to, I think, 5 shillings and 15 cents. So it's as I said, it's at a sweet spot right now. Lots of foreigners are looking to get in, and the prospects for Safaricom with data, I believe, are phenomenal. It's not yet hit the critical mass that it needs to hit with regards to the number of subscribers that are tapping into data. But when it gets there, I tend to think it's almost a gravy train with regards to the telecom sector.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're like us. I think that you in Kenya are sitting waiting for the corporate results to start coming in, really to give some more direction to the markets. What are you expecting from the upcoming results season when it kicks off next month?
Yeah, results should be coming towards the end of February, pretty much mainly in March. I tend to think it'll be muted to single-digit growth. 2009 wasn't the best year. If you have single-digit growth, in some instances double-digit, I think it'll be very rare the double-digit. I would be happy. So muted to single-digit is what I expect. I mean, I would be surprised if there are any surprises.
Of course, then one sector that did perform last year was, well, one market was the fixed interest market, and of course that fixed interest market is going electronic this year. I mean, do you think that bodes well for further interest in the sector?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the going electronic did wonders for the equity market, and I think going electronic did wonders for many markets across Africa. As far as the fixed income sector is concerned, I think Nigeria, just sort of, went through the roof when that happened. So I expect Kenya to go the same way. There's always been a muted interest in the fixed income side with regards to foreign interest. And I tend to think foreign interest is going to grow. This is one sector that needs to be tapped at the foreign side in fixed income in this country. It's just a question of when rather than if, when it goes up.